Introduction. Defense mechanism. Bodily defense mechanism. Ego defense mechanism. Mental defense mechanism or ego defense mechanism. Introduction. Sigmund Freud in 1904 used this term defense mechanism to refer to the unconscious process that defends or protects a person against anxiety, shame, loss of self-esteem, conflict, or unacceptable feelings. According to Freud, when id is in serious conflict with ego and superego, the individual suffer from tension or anxiety. Defense mechanism enables a person to resolve conflict and reduce the stress and anxiety. Usually, all defense mechanisms are operated at unconscious level. Most of defense mechanisms are self-deceptive in nature. Definition. Defense mechanism is a pattern of adjustment through which an individual relieves anxiety caused by an uncomfortable situation that threatens self-esteem. When these defense mechanisms are used moderately are harmless, but excessive and persistent defense use is harmful. Classification of defense mechanism. These defense mechanisms are classified according to its result: positive defense mechanism and negative defense mechanism. Positive defense mechanism: compensation, substitution, sublimation, rationalization, suppression, undoing, identification, transference, intellectualization, and introjection. The negative defense mechanism is suppression, displacement, projection, regression, fixation, fantasy, reaction formation, conversion, dissociation, denial. Positive defense mechanism. Compensation. Compensation is a pattern by which tension or anxiety relieved by an individual make up for personal weakness. Example: a student who fails in his studies may compensate by becoming the college champion in athletics. A plain girl who cannot compete with her more beautiful sisters may compensate by studying hard and come first in her class. Second, substitution. It is mechanisms by which tension or anxiety is reduced by replacing the unachievable goal with achievable goal. Example: a student who has not been able to get admission to the MBBS course may try to substitute it with a course of physiotherapy or nursing. A person aspires to become a national level cricket player and not selected. He may substitute this goal by being a coach at college level. Sublimation. It is mechanisms that causes canalization of socially unacceptable desires into acceptable form. In this mechanism, primitive impulses are transferred or directed to the socially useful goal. Example: a teenage boy with strong competitive and aggressive feelings becomes a football player. A young man who has lost his lover may turn to write poetry about love. A person who has aggressive feeling and cannot express in society can become a soldier or boxer. Rationalization. It is a defense mechanism in which an individual justifies failures and socially unacceptable feelings and behaviors by making excuses or formulate logical reasons, socially approved reasons. Example: a husband does not enjoy the company of wife outside the home and usually leave his wife at home. He gives logic that his wife is social shy. A girl fails to get admission for the nursing course may point out a number of difficulties of nursing profession. A person without a vehicle says that he does not want to risk his life by driving. Repression. Repression is the process of unconscious forgetfulness of our unpleasant experiences. Repression is the involuntary blocking of unpleasant feelings and experiences from one's awareness. Example, a man is jealous of his good friend's success but is unaware of his feeling of jealousy. Undoing. Undoing is the act symbolically canceling or reversing out of previous act which is unacceptable. Example, a daughter shout of her father as there is no petrol in the car and is getting late for office, brings a favorite film for her father to watch. This is an example of undoing her behavior of shouting and then bringing a film. Identification. Through this process, an individual attempts to increase self-worth by acquiring self-attributes and characteristics of another individual one admires. Example, the young son of a famous civil rights worker adopts his father's attitudes and behavior with the intent of pursuing similar aspirations. An illiterate father often takes his son higher education as his own achievement. It plays a large part in the development of personality. In this individual feels personal satisfaction in the success and achievement of other group or person. So this is the young son. Example, the young son of the famous civil rights worker adopt his father's attitudes and behavior with the intent of pursuing similar aspiration. An illiterate father often takes his son higher education as his own achievement. Transference. In transference, the image of one person is unconsciously identified with that of another. Example, a patient who is fond of his daughter finds the nurse of the same age and height as his daughter. So he transfers his positive emotions to the nurse as his daughter. It is also possible that if he dislikes his daughter, transfers his negative emotions to that nurse by being rude, abusive, or aggressive without any cause. Transference. Intellectualization. Intellectualization is an attempt to avoid expressing actual emotions associated with a stressful situation by using the intellectual process of logic, reasoning, and analysis. Example, a young professor received a letter from his fiancée breaking off their engagement. He shows no emotion when discussing this with his best friend. Instead, he analyzes his fiancée behavior and tries to reason why the relationship failed. So a young professor received a letter from his fiancée breaking off their engagement. He showed no emotion when discussing this with his best friend. Instead, he analyzes his fiancée behavior and tries to reason why the relationship failed. Intellectualization is an attempt to avoid expressing actual emotion associated with a stressful situation by using the intellectual processes of logic, reasoning, and analysis. Introjection. Introjections that values and characteristics of significant persons are incorporated in one's personality. Example, a woman who likes to live in a simple way introjects in her the sophisticated way of living like her husband. Introjection. Negative defense mechanism suppression. Suppression is the voluntary blocking of unpleasant feelings and experiences from one's awareness to avoid discomfort and anxiety. Example, student consciously decides not to think about her insult in examination hall so that he can study effectively. A patient may refuse to consider his difficulties by saying that he does not want to talk about it. Suppression. A patient may refuse to consider his difficulties by saying that he does not want to talk about it. Displacement. In this defense mechanism, an unconsciously emotional feeling is transferred to person or object who are less dangerous than those who initially aroused the emotion. An individual who is using displacement is unaware of at this time at the time, but later he can realize it. A person who is angry with his boss but cannot show it for fear of losing the job may fight with his wife on return from the office. Projection. Projection is the placing blame for own difficulties upon others. Here, others are seen as responsible for own mistakes. One's own unacceptable feelings and thoughts are expressed as they are due to others. Example, a surgeon who did mistake in operation may insist that it happened because theater nurse or theater nurse and ward boy did their task badly. So a business person who values factuality is late for a meeting and state, "Sorry, I'm late. My assistant forgot to remind me of the time." The time. So projection, placing blaming to others by verbally. Regression. Regression means an immature way to responding to a stress or go backwards. It is the adult revert back to an earlier developmental level in order to deal with reality. An individual does less mature form of behavior when with difficulties, where he finds less conflict, hence less anxiety. Adults too many regress to the oral stage of development and suck their thumb when life gets stressful. So example, nurse makes an error in giving medication and starts crying. So that is an example of regression. A person who is depressed may withdraw to his or her room, curl up in fetal position on the bed. So that is regression. Fixation refers to the point in the individual's development at which certain aspects of the emotional development do not advance. Example, thumb, sucking continuously till adult age. An unmarried middle-aged man still depends on his mother to provide his basic needs. Fixation, that is fixation. Fantasy. Fantasy is used to gratify frustrated desires by imaginary achievement and wishful thinking. The tendency of daydreaming is most common during adolescence. Example, a young boy who could not help his ailing father due to shortage of money daydreams that he has got lot of money from lottery ticket and his father, mother, and family members has best of the facilities for everything. Fantasy. He's dreaming. Okay. Reaction formation. In these defense mechanisms, the unacceptable real feelings are repressed and acceptable opposite feelings are expressed. It is defined as conscious formations of an acceptable impulse into exactly opposite attitudes, impulse, feelings, or behaviors. Example, woman who actually dislike her mother-in-law hide her feelings by being always nice to her. The action formation, like plastic. Conversion. In this pattern, defense mechanism, strong emotion complex which are not expressed are converted into physical symptoms. It has two benefits for person. It resolves the conflict, it resolves the conflicts, it brings him a great deal of tensions and sympathy. Example, student nurse who is very anxious about her examination may develop a headache. Conversion. Example, you have like exam, then you are saying you have stomach pain. Dissociation. Dissociation is involuntary suppressions of a mental functions from rest of personality in a manner that allows expressions of forbidden unconscious impulse without having any sense of responsibility for actions. Example, partial amnesia. Dissociation. Involuntary suppression of a mental function from rest personality in a manner that allows expressions of forbidden unconscious impulse without having any sense of responsibility for actions. Denial. An individual refuses to face the reality. It protects the individual from shock of reality. Person unconsciously use this mechanism and this reaction is for some time. Denial is quite harmless if practiced in moderation but can lead to a serious difficulties in health and lifestyle if practiced in excess. Example, when some very near and dear one die in the family, some people say no, he is still alive. Denial. Thank you.